Okay, back working on the old saw here, and today I have been working on the handle. I don't know if you remember, but the handle had a significant bit of damage on the top here, and looked at a few different ways of fixing this, and there's really not a good way. The whole top part of it, if you recall, was eroded away, probably broken and then eroded. This old aluminum slash pot metal just was not up to the task. In fact, really, if you think about it, kind of not really a very good structural design. This is what happens when you build stuff without computer aided design or probably really fully understanding the tensions on things. If you think of the amount of leverage that you'd get holding the handle back here, and then holding the whole weight of this enormous saw and the stresses of the saw cutting through wood and that sort of thing, it is not at all surprising that that broke off there, in my opinion. Will I ever get this thing back as strong as it was? Probably not. I think the goal here is to get it back strong enough that I can run and demonstrate the saw, but um, not really use that handle too much or too hard. So what I'm going to do here, and what I have done, is I cleaned all the metal up. I actually took this part of the handle off. This part actually slides on to here, so it actually slides on to there. So, and then this little set screw just goes into that hole, and that's what allows it to turn back and forth. So that's actually good in a way because it allows me to totally secure this bar on there with JB Weld. The other thing about it, and I probably should have filmed it, but the bar on this end, but I'll point at this end because it's a little bit more obvious, had little divots in it around the circumference. I think there's probably 6 divots around it. And that piece of metal was clearly cast into this piece of, I'm going to call it aluminum, might be pot metal, whatever it was, into this piece of aluminum. But it was actually cast into it, and those little divots, out of the bar, is what actually was holding this thing from turning this way, but also is what secured it into this piece of metal. Now, obviously, this broke out. So what I did to get as secure a connection with JB Weld as I could is I actually very carefully took this bar out of the handle here. I was able, luckily, to do that, and I actually cleaned it all up. I used some brake cleaner, cleaned it all up to get a good mating surface for both pieces, and then I put JB Weld around and inside this fixture and around the perimeter of the bar so that those divots were completely filled up around the circumference of this thing to hopefully create some bond. This initial coat of JB Weld is just that. It's just an initial coat. As you can see, it is not at all complete. That actually gives you a good view of where this thing was broken still. What the goal here is just to kind of get it in the right position, get it at right angles, essentially, in the right area. And then what I'm going to do is let this completely dry. I'm going to give it till tomorrow to completely dry. And then I'll be putting more coats of JB Weld on this to make this visually look more correct, to provide more structural adhesion. And I'll also be putting a bunch of JB Weld down inside here, but right at the bottom. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to do that. Obviously, I can't get any into that whole area. But basically, what I'd like to do in an ideal world is almost fill this area up. I'll tip the saw up and I'll get as much JB Weld in there as I can to adhere on the inside. The way JB Weld works, apparently, and I've used it lots of times before, but I did a little double check on this, is that to do multiple coats, it works really, really well, but you have to let the first coat dry pretty much entirely. I guess being a two-part polymer, if you don't do that, the second coat will actually loosen up the first coat, and then you got a big mess. So we're going to let this completely dry. We're going to put a whole bunch more JB Weld on it, let that completely dry, and then once we've got, maybe there'll even be a third coat. I don't know at this point. But then what I'll do is I'll sand slash machine this to kind of look right. It's always going to look fixed. I don't think there's any way of getting around that, but at least that's going to get our handle back on there. So pretty pleased with how that's looking so far. Whether it lasts is anybody's guess. I guess if it doesn't, then we'll move on to some other idea of repair. There were a couple of other things I did consider, and maybe I should talk about those because they may be kind of obvious. And that was the idea of maybe putting a strap or bar, around this and actually securing it, by drilling some holes through the handle piece here. That was one thought. My concern around that is that this metal here is, it's not very thick. I haven't put a measuring bit on there, but it's not thick, and it's also not very good. It's not very strong to begin with. That's why this thing broke. And my worry is by drilling some holes through here, is I'm just going to create another failure point, and as opposed to having to deal with the issue up here, I'm going to have a broken handle down here. So I really didn't want to do that. That was one thought. The other thought I had was to maybe, if there was enough metal, to actually put another, call it a collet or a piece in this area to slide this into, to provide a little bit more rigidity up and down with this. But they're really, again, the walls on this thing, you can kind of get a sense of it even through this. You can see how terribly thin those walls were relative to this. This is why this thing broke in the first place, and there's not really any room to machine that out any farther to get a collet in there. So again, we're going to do this eyes wide open. It is probably still not going to be ridiculously strong. Certainly not going to be able to really use this saw, as it was when it was new, that's for sure. But that's not the idea. At the end of the day, I'm looking for a really cool wall hanger that I can take out once in a while, fire it up, and show that it runs. And that's what we're going to do. We're certainly not going to cut down trees with it. We may never even cut wood with it. So anyways, that's a long little chat about a broken handle. So anyways, that's it for this one. Bye for now. Oh, hey guys, just giving a little bit of an update regarding the handle repair job that I did with the JB Weld. I went and was just putting the videos together for this, and realized I hadn't actually filmed anything else on the handle, and I'm sure you're interested to see how it looks. And you know what, I'm really quite happy with it. Interestingly, that JB Weld, this is the JB welded part here. This was completely, the top of this, if you recall, was completely broken out. So we had to build up layers of JB Weld across the top here, which then I sanded / machined into the shape that it was before it was broken, or at least to my best guess of what it looked like. And then of course inside that tube, I put a whole bunch more JB Weld. If you recall, there's a set screw. The set screw goes into a little slot on the main metal bar that's in here. And so I basically filled it up with JB Weld just about to there, so that so you can still get the set screw into the slot properly. But basically, this whole back half is all JB Weld. So the whole thing's pretty solid now. The way this handle, I call it a handle, but it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not really a handle. And as you can see on the saw, there are two of them. I may have explained this before, but that handle is not, I imagine guys used it for lifting the saw around, but I mean, the way that it's designed, I don't know that ever made any sense, even when the saw was new, because that piece is not substantial. The aluminum / pot metal this thing is made out of is not strong to begin with. So it's no wonder why that thing broke. But bottom line is, you don't need to use it as a handle. Its real purpose is a clutch handle. So this actually engages the clutch. So there it is, that's unengaged, and that's disengaged. That's what this thing does. That's its purpose. So the purpose isn't to lift the saw with it. The purpose is to engage or disengage the clutch, and both handles do the same thing. Ugh, hard to do with one hand. I'm gonna have to do it up here. This saw, everything about this saw is heavy and difficult. So anyways, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update again about how well that worked. I'm just, what I'm doing with it, as I mentioned, this is the purpose of this is just to get this saw working, maybe demonstrate it working a couple of times, but basically its main function in life is going to be to sit on a wall. So, as a wall hanger, or hanging up on some chains in my garage here is probably where it's going to end up. So it's definitely not going to be used for real you know, really cutting wood. And so in the interim, what I'm doing is I'm just not lifting it by this at all. I'm using it for its main purpose as a clutch, and that's all I'm going to use it for. And that's kind of my game plan. But I have to say, you know, I'm really happy with how that turned out. I mean, visually, anyways, it looks good. It may look like I painted it or something, because it is basically the same color as everything else. I did not. That is JB Weld. That's the JB Weld color after you sand it and grind it, is kind of what it comes out like. Normally, you know, when it dries, it's shiny, sort of that shiny gray color. But you know, when you grind it, and this is what you get, which happens to pretty much match everything else on this saw. So it's yeah, I don't know. It's I'm really pleased with that. Anyways, so we'll see how this works. Just wanted to give you an update on that bit. So that'll be the end of this video. And again, would really appreciate it, guys, if you would like and subscribe. And please leave a comment. I love the comments. I love them all. I love the criticism. I love the jokes. And I will reply to, within reason, every comment that I receive. So please do leave a comment and let me know your thoughts on this crazy 1946 chainsaw built in Vancouver.